Hey guys, I'm Fuller,
I'm Jonah.
and this is this week's episode of Off the Line. We're going to start things off, talk about everything pretty much going on in the American realm of soccer, move on to some goings on in the EPL. It was a big game this week. If you didn't watch, probably did. And then I think we're just going to cap it off with some Golden Boot stuff, talk about an unknown American kid going to some team in England. And see where we go. So
Sounds good.
Paco Craig re-signed with Louisville City, and I didn't realize that a lot of people do consider him, we talked about this before, one of the best defenders in the USL. He is really he's great, and his transition from playing under O'Connor to going to the three-man coaching system to Hackworth, it's been great, and I think it's a good sign for Louisville City. They've lost a lot of players this offseason, unfortunately. I don't know. There's more stability than I hoped for.
Right.
So I'm very excited about that.
I know it's become kind of a cliched term, but he's definitely always been the spine of that defense.
Absolutely.
And kind of the spark of the transition when Louisville City does try to play it out of the back. But no, I'm right there with you. I didn't realize he was held at that high of esteem within the league. I think that's partially because of the nature of the league, its visibility, how much each fan base gets to watch other teams other than their own. But it's great to see that amidst Louisville City losing all these players and signing all of these other players, it's good to see that we have locked down somebody that's been as important as him.
Going on at Louisville City as well, Jose Carranza was called up to the U20 camp, which is big for Louisville City. You have players coming from the MLS. I didn't really see who else was on that roster. I assume it's just MLS, Youth Academy products, that type of nature. But it's nice for USL. It's nice for Louisville City. And I think it's shown that Hackworth has that dedication to bring in youth players to Louisville City. And I think that's in part a cool thing about the USL in general is you get to see, I got to see Andrew Carlton play at Slugger Field.
Right. It's awesome.
But now he's playing for Atlanta United. I don't know. I think Jose Carranza, whatever, will be cool to watch in the future. I think he's only 18, 19 years old right now, so I'm really excited to see that level of play at a local level or at a local team.
Yeah, and it's something, going back to Hackworth, it's something that me and you kind of talked about on one of our previous episodes. Just knowing of Hackworth's background, seeing what kind of strings he could pull, whether it's bringing players in or having players on the roster, and kind of shedding some light on them to Tab Ramos, who I believe is in charge of the U20 team. It's good to see. It's good to see some of that already happening so early into his tenure.
So Jesse Marsh, moving across to Europe, but American
Keeping
coach.
it American.
He's the assistant head coach at Leipzig right now.
Yeah, just got there.
Being rumored to move to Salzburg. Is that a step up, step down?
I think it's definitely a step up from where he was in New York, just because of the fact that Salzburg regularly competes in European competitions. I think they were just in the Europa League this year, but they are a team that's been in the Champions League before. It stays within the Red Bull family, so in that sense it makes sense. But for me, I was almost expecting for him to hang around Leipzig for a couple of years and possibly move straight onto that sort of job, or piggyback out of the Red Bull family, because it is a step up from New York. But I don't think he expected his career to take that sort of turn.
Yeah.
But a lot of people doubted him for leaving New York in the first place. They said, why are you stepping down as the head coach of one of the most successful, regular season-wise, one of the most successful clubs in MLS history, to become an assistant coach? And he said for that exact reason he wanted to get in Europe, and this was his way in. So I think that if he does, he'll rise to the occasion. But it does seem like a little bit of a sidestep. But that's a rumor that isn't even set forth for this season. I think that Salzburg's current coach is out of contract at the end of the season, and he's just being thrown in the mix as coaches that could potentially be there next season in his replacement. So,
go ahead.
No, just definitely nothing confirmed or anything.
Across the pond back to America, Guillermo Barros Chiloto from Boca. Is that a good hire for the Galaxy? The Galaxy are just one of those teams that should be a lot better on paper than they are. I mean, you have Zlatan,
right.
You need to get it together.
I think somebody of that quality makes sense, especially when you're keeping it for a coach of that quality, but also finding one that is coached in the Americas, because that's just predominantly where. Well, Galaxy are kind of an interesting breed because they do pull from older players in Europe, from Europe. But if they go into the trend that the rest of the league is currently in of recruiting younger players from South America, I think the move definitely makes a lot of sense. It's one that we were originally expecting Atlanta United to make. I think everybody pretty much expected him to be named as their head coach. So to see him named in the MLS isn't necessarily surprising because it was almost expected. But to see him pop up in LA, I think makes sense, especially because of the heavy Hispanic influence that team and that entire city has.
Cool. I guess wrapping things up with America, the men's training camp is going on right now. And we're going to focus more on that, after it happens. But what are you looking forward coming out of that camp?
Out of the camp? It's really going to be hard to see until the games that are played. Ironically enough, the January camp games, I think, are being played the first week of February. But coming out of that camp, really what I want to see is something that we just never really saw with Jurgen, like a defined game plan. You can look out on the field and say, oh, we're definitely playing this way. And other than having a defined game plan, I want to see everybody on the same page. Like, one of the most damning images in my mind of the entire... And I don't think Jurgen Klinsmann was a mistake. I'm going to preface that with this. I think that he was the right hire. I think we might have held on to him a little bit too long, but I don't think he should have left after the World Cup. So I don't think any of that was for a loss. We learned a lot about it, but one of the most damning things about his entire tenure was when we were getting spanked by, I think it was Costa Rica. I think we ended up losing either 3-1 or 4-1 in New Jersey. But it was Michael Bradley and Jermaine Jones walking over to the sideline and talking to Jurgen Klinsmann, being like, what are we doing? We need to figure out a game plan to stop them because we've let in 3 goals in 15 minutes. And I think that right there was kind of summing up where U.S. soccer was, especially post-2014 World Cup. So I want to see everybody with a defined game plan and everybody on the same page knowing what they're doing.
Cool. Hell yeah, yeehaw. Damn, that was 9 minutes. We can probably just do this whole last one in one take.
Yeah. It's all Premier League topics.
Yeah. Yeehaw. So this past week, there was a big game. Manchester City, Liverpool, the defending champions against the number 1 team in the league. Going into it, who did you think was going to win, and were you right?
I thought Liverpool was going to win.
I did too. I definitely thought that too.
Just because even in games, I thought it would be a close game. And just like it happened last year for City, any close game they were in, it just ended up falling their way. I expected something similar to happen in Liverpool's favor this year around because it seems like that kind of season for them.
Yeah.
So yeah, I was wrong. I thought Liverpool was gonna win, but
great game.
Yeah.
Great game. Fernandinho proved he is the EPL's Ron Artest. Just out there not giving a damn about who he was hurting. That was kind of fun to watch. But the title race has to be back on, right? 4-point gap between
Absolutely.
City and Liverpool now.
Absolutely.
Do you think this is going to be a trend for Liverpool, dropping points?
I'm interested to see. I'm almost kind of hesitant to make a suggestion because I suggested that it wouldn't really matter in the long run when Arsenal hit their first little wobble. And it's Arsenal's little wobble seems to just be righting itself now. That was almost a month ago, so I don't know. I don't think so. They've played with such quality this season that I don't think it should. I think that if it does continue to, if they don't steady the ship quickly, I think it says a lot about like the character of their players more than it does about the quality of them. Speaking in cliches again, but I don't expect them to falter much. I still think that they're gonna win the league.
Interesting. Do you think City, is this like a correction? You know, they've had a couple games that haven't gone their way. Do you think City, is this the return to the form for them?
I think that it's a return to the form in the sense that they'll continue to compete for the title. I don't think they're going to run away. Liverpool's going to run away with it with like 6-8 games left. But I don't know, like even when we've seen players like De Bruyne get healthy and come back in, he just doesn't seem like, he seems like 75 to 80% of himself, which is still one of the best attacking midfielders in the league, but he's not just that like Messi-esque player in the sense that anytime he had the ball, you knew he was going to do something crazy with it last season.
Yeah.
And yeah, like I said, on top of that, last season, it seems like anytime Manchester City like faced any adversity, stuff kind of fell their way. I'm not saying that they lucked into the
They had a lot of 85-minute plus goals.
But right, exactly. And on top of that, just the way they're reacting to early goals, like last season when they would score a goal, when they would get scored on early, it didn't matter because you always could tell that they knew they were going to score eventually.
Yeah.
And this season, it almost seems like they don't know how to handle it as well.
Yeah,
and I don't know if that's a mentality thing, if that's something that Pep can work out, or what exactly that's stemming from.
So moving on, you had some questions about Manchester United.
Yeah. I didn't see, and it's not surprising considering the whole interim situation that they're in right now. But do you see any players? I was asking more on the departing side more than bringing in any players. Do you see any sort of activity happening on the Manchester United front?
Well, you know, if Jose Mourinho is the manager, I think Anthony Martial is up for sale right now. Or like, he's not getting that new contract that he signed a month ago. I don't know. I think Anthony Martial's days were numbered when Jose Mourinho was at the club. I think Paul Pogba's days were rapidly approaching to he was going to leave the club. And I think that's all changed now. They very much seem to enjoy being there. They seem happy when they play. Pogba's had 4 goals, 3 assists in the last 5 games. And that's the most productive stretch of his time at Manchester United by far. I don't see them leaving anymore. I do see maybe some older players moving on, like Chris Smalling. I mean, he just signed a new contract. But we've seen them do that. And then, for example, Patrice Evra signed a new contract, and then they sold him a month later.
Right.
So I don't necessarily know if that's something to boost his value. Every player seemed to enjoy playing out there. Like Victor Lindelof was someone I thought would be gone by the end of the season, but he has played pretty well under Solskjaer. So, you know, I don't know what the departures will be this summer. If there are any...
Oh, I was talking about this window specifically, like this January.
I don't think they allow anyone to leave this January right now. I think they're going to allow another manager to come in, assess the squad, and then make those decisions. But I would say probably Valencia is going to leave soon. He's like 33, 34 years old. Phil Jones has just proved time and time again he is kind of duty butter.
Well, back to the whole Solskjaer situation. The question that I thought of off camera was, we've seen big clubs like Chelsea do it when they sacked their manager and brought in Roberto Di Matteo, came through, ended up winning a Champions League with us, and then they gave him the job next season and he was out before January. We've seen smaller clubs like Swansea promote coaches from within in Gary Monk, and that was a good 2 or 3 seasons ago that he lost his job now. But so I know it's not a majority, but I've seen a contingent of people suggesting that if Solskjaer continues to get these results through the end of the season, that he should be given a chance, even if it's just a 1-year deal. Where do you stand on that? And like, to what extent do you find him the right man for the job? Is he a Band-Aid fix or a surgical fix? Like,
Well, I think first and foremost you have to consider that he is on contract with Molde. Like, he has to go back. He's on loan technically. So I don't know how willing United are to pay a transfer fee for a manager. That seems kind of weird to me for them to do, especially when you have managers like Zidane. Pochettino has made it no secret that he's great friends with Sir Alex Ferguson. So there is kind of that influence there. But in terms of him being the right man, I think he's the right man for right now. I think he's someone that the fans love. They can get behind for 6 months, 7 months. He knows the identity of the club. He gets what attacking football at Manchester United is supposed to be. I use all those quotes because those are things lobbed against Jose Mourinho that I think are very subjective for a lot of people, what attacking football truly is and should be. But he died. The players get forward, they get into space. That was something that Mourinho did not really have his players doing as much. And I think he's just the right man in terms of getting United to make a Champions League run, get the best out of his players. Right now, he's probably already told them, you're not going to contend for the title. This is what we're doing. We're going to take it 1 week at a time, and we're going to do it how it should be done, how soccer should be played. I think he's the right man for 6 months, 7 months. I think he goes back to Molde and enjoys a good career in Norway, and I think Zidane or Pochettino comes in and takes United.
Something that I've personally been just kind of like slowly thinking about in the back of my head recently when I see Zidane linked and I see Pochettino linked is I feel like he's slowly slipped into the back of people's memory, but how good of a fit do you think Luis Enrique would be? Because we've seen him win Champions Leagues at Barcelona, and we've seen him manage big personalities and big talents at Barcelona. So do you think of him of the same ilk as a Zidane and as a Pochettino?
When did he last coach?
I think he's been out of a job for like 2.5 seasons now, and the last time the reason I say I think everybody's kind of forgotten about him is honestly the last time I've seen him linked with a job was the Chelsea job when we ended up hiring Antonio Conte instead.
Yeah.
So it's been like a while since I've heard anything about him. Like I don't know if he like pulled a Ricky Williams and moved to like India or wherever and like lives in a tent now. But yeah, I don't know. I thought the name came to my mind for some reason when I was reading like a story about Zidane specifically being linked with the job. And I just think that move would almost make just as much sense as the other two that are being linked. And I'm almost interested to like know why that name hasn't been tossed around.
I don't know. Maybe he's taking a sabbatical or something. Maybe it's like Andre Villas-Boas. He's just over it, doing something else with his life.
Yeah.
I don't know. Do you know Andre Villas-Boas is a race car driver now?
Is he really? I heard him like linked with a job sometime like semi-recently.
Yeah, no, he like competes in like I guess minor league race car like in Europe. I don't.
Right on.
Weird dude, man. Weird dude. Moving on. I guess we could have included this in the United States news as well. I feel like this has been a move that people. Not even talking about Christian. This is Christian Pulisic to Chelsea for the uninformed, but for American soccer fans who follow the Premier League, I think one thing that bonded everyone together was Pulisic did not play for their team, so we could all just cheer for him together at the club level. But everyone had that hope and desire that if he did come to the Premier League, he'd come to their team. And now, 19 out of 20 people or 19 out of 20 teams feel aggrieved, As a Chelsea fan, $68 million on Christian Pulisic. I guess my question about that fee is, for years it seemed that Chelsea were never going to spend money after Fernando Torres.
Right.
And now in the last 3 windows, we've seen 3 really, really big transfer fees. Do you think Abramovich is now opening up the purse a little bit? Do you think he's willing to spend money after taking that loss on Fernando Torres?
I do think that he's he's trying to show that he's still investing in the club for sure. Because kind of like we were talking about off camera again, I do think he's very much still looking to sell the club. I don't think it's like, oh my god, I gotta sell it now type deal. But I do think that if he heard an offer for it he would take it. And Chelsea being the size that they are, I do eventually think that offer will come. But moving back to the price tag for Pulisic specifically, there's a couple things that the price tag, I think it was like $75 million US dollars was the conversion. Yeah. And there are a couple things that mean. Like, one, that's the third most expensive player in Chelsea's history. So I very much think he comes in with the expectation of contributing very regularly. And two, I really do think it means that Hazard leaves in the summer. Because I don't think Chelsea spend that much money on a player that's not a striker right now. I think the only reason they spend that kind of money is if they know that it's coming back and that Pulisic's going to be a replacement. So I do honestly think that that if it wasn't already likely that Hazard leaves in the summer, which I think it was, I think it's almost nailed on at this point, which doesn't bother me. It's something Hazard's talked about moving to Madrid basically ever since he became a superstar at Chelsea. But he's always been super respectful of Chelsea in the process of talking about how he would love to play for Madrid. He's never forced a move. He's always said he wouldn't force a move and that he would listen to the club and what their best interest is within his contract. And he's 28 years old, so it's now or never. So I don't begrudge him for that at all. But I do think the price tag for Pulisic, with it being that high, I think it A, means that he's expected to be a big contributor, and B, Chelsea need a striker more than they need a winger right now. So the only reason they would spend that much on a winger is if they're going to lose one.
Do you think Pulisic? I mean, Hazard's been a left winger. Wouldn't you say essentially?
He's been playing on the right more recently. He started on the left very much so, but pretty much for the past season and a half, he's been like on the right flank.
I don't know. I've seen a lot of criticism of Chelsea, like, oh, they're going to send him on loan because of Chelsea's, I guess, notorious
this isn't a Matt
loan
Miazga.
Yeah.
The players that we send out on loan, we buy for
$2, $3, $4 million.
Right.
Like, yeah. I don't foresee him getting sent out on loan. I maybe see him struggling to get minutes at first.
Absolutely.
A big thing for players is transitioning to the pace and the physicality of the Premier League. So, that is to be expected. But he does. I don't think the United States is playing in any major tournaments this summer.
The Gold Cup, my God.
Oh, so I was thinking Copa America.
All hail the Gold Cup. Come on.
Yeah, okay. Well, run that
yeah.
back. So he's going to have a rough summer transitioning into Chelsea next fall. I would not be surprised if he does not make the starting 11 the first couple games.
Don't forget that the Gold Cup is that weird tournament format where you can swap a certain number of players in and out of your roster between the group stages and the knockout stages. So in the past we've seen different European players, and sometimes we saw it with Josie Altidore. I want to say maybe last Gold Cup. It's every 2 years. We've seen them called in just for the knockout game. So I think that's also a situation that we could definitely expect to see to let him get settled in at Chelsea.
So now that you know that he has moved to Chelsea, it's the most anyone has ever paid for an American player by like $40 million.
I think
$45 million. John Brooks cost Wolfsburg $20 million, the most expensive.
No, I know. I think I saw some stat where Pulisic at the number 1 spot cost as much as like the next 9 spots in the top 10 combined, and that is including John Brooks, who's like a third of that next 10.
So now that he's made this move, is Pulisic the spot on, tacked on face of American soccer now?
I think he already was, and I definitely think that puts him in a position to be moving forward. But I think it's still too early to tell what the arc of his career is going to look like, especially when we have players like Tyler Adams and Weston McKennie already like being very, very, very well recognized. And we got to remember that the age that Pulisic started getting recognized is about the same age that these players were getting recognized too. It's weird to think about him as older, but I do believe Pulisic is at least a year or two older than both of those players. So they have plenty of time to shine. I honestly, the more and more this season progresses and I see him get minutes here and there, I think we have a real diamond in the rough with Josh Sargent too. I think he's going to be huge moving forward. So I don't know if he's going to be the nailed-on face of the team, especially because his personality seems to be a little bit smaller. I've seen interviews with Tyler Adams where it's just like astounding to me that he's 19 years old when he talks about his work rate and his work ethic and just things that he values and things that are important to him. I was listening to an interview with Grant Wall where Grant Wall, who has interviewed him twice now, and Grant Wall would not be surprised if he came out named captain out of this, not out of the January camp because he'll be in Leipzig, but comes out as a captain for the Gold Cup.
Yeah.
Just because he carries that sort of mentality. So I would say that he would also be a decent shout for being the face of U.S. soccer moving forward. But Pulisic definitely is the glam pick, the star power right now, unquestionably.
Wrapping things up in the Premier League, we have a really, really good Golden Boot race. Aubameyang right now, I think, has 14 goals.
Yep.
Salah, Kane right behind. Who's your pick? Who you got?
I just feel like... I don't know. I feel like I want to say Aubameyang, but for some reason I don't think that's right. Just
Barcelona
because...
kind of slipping.
Yeah, and it's definitely because of the form of the team as a whole. But in terms of how important a goal scorer is to a team, I think that Harry Kane is just as important to Tottenham as he is to Arsenal at this current time.
Yeah.
I think that everybody loves to say that Spurs wouldn't know how to score goals without Kane, especially when Son was still kind of missing his form.
Yeah.
But I very much think the same questions could be applied to Arsenal if you saw him flake out. So.
Well, I think that wraps things up this week.
Whoa, you didn't say who you would pick.
Yeah, Aubameyang for me. I think Aubameyang pulls it out. I'm not calling. Like, I know someone will probably interpret it as like I'm not calling Mo Salah a one-season wonder. I just don't think Mo Salah is going to repeat his feats from last year. I think he'll score a cool 25 to 30 goals, but I kind of think Aubameyang will do it better. I don't know. Aubameyang is very much like Mo Salah in that he can work on the wings real well, but he's also just great as a striker. He's great as a number 9. I think he's one of the best forward players in the Premier League right now. So I think he's going to get it. I think he's going to hold out and score another 15, 16 goals.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, before we wrap it up, we are shooting this on a Saturday, and officially 8 weeks from today, the MLS season is starting. So starting next week, I'm just going to tease a little something. We're going to kind of divide it up week by week, and at the end of each show for the next couple weeks until the season starts, we'll be previewing each team. Haven't really decided on the format. Don't know if we're going to do a player to watch, storyline to watch. But yeah, starting next week, we'll be starting to preview the MLS, which is so bizarre because I feel like the championship happened. I literally feel like I was sitting here watching it like
a couple weeks ago.
It's wild.
Yeah.
So yeah, look forward to that. I think that about wraps it up for today, though.
Yeah, I'm Fuller.
I'm Jonah.
Yeah. Have a great day, guys.